What is up, and welcome to another edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker, your host. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing the podcast. We are brought to you guys today by our advertisers. Our advertisers are Bell to Bell Fitness, Shea Tor, a realtor out in Arizona, former Bruin alum, and my main man Howard Chang, a realtor right here in Los Angeles. Let's go through them, guys. Bell to Bell Fitness is a boxing gym on the West Coast used by their FIT acronym, Fight Inspired Training. My main man, Tony Gonzalez, was the boxing coach for UCLA for over 10 years. He has built this gym on the West Side to learn how to boxing, stay in shape, and get you all the essentials you need to become somebody that is obsessed with boxing and fitness. Make sure to check it out. Go into Bell to Bell Fitness and say you heard about it from the Bruin Bible, and you're going to get a free session with Tony Gonzalez. So make sure to check that out. Shea Tor, my main man. Shea Tor is a licensed real estate agent in Arizona and a lifelong Bruin. He's a current Wooden Athletic Fund donor and football season ticket holder. When not selling houses or going to UCLA games, he loves to travel the country, checking out different arenas, ballparks, and stadiums. If you're looking to make the move to Arizona or know someone who is, please reach out to our loyal friend, Mr. Shea Tor. His phone number is 602-487-3975. Once again, his number is 602-487-3975. Make sure to check that out. And then the local realtor we got out here, Howard Chang. Howard Chang is a local realtor with the Serene team at eXp Realty. Their team has an office right here in Culver City, though they help clients buy and sell homes all over the LA County and the surrounding areas. Howard and his team do a ton of business and are super in tune with the market, knowing winning strategies to give their clients a competitive advantage. Have amazing vendor referrals, are a one-stop shop for anything real estate, and just provide a ton of value for their clients. Howard and his partner, Kyle Draper, are UCLA alums and a huge fans of the UCLA football and basketball programs. You will often see them at games, tailgating and networking, and staying involved with the UCLA alumni community. They would love to help any fellow alumni with accomplishing their real estate goals. So if you guys have any real estate needs in the LA area, look no further. Howard is your guy. All right, guys, we're going to go into the episode. What is up to the Bruin Bible? Will Decker, your host, and my main man, the madman to my right. We were expecting a game that we were thinking was going to get completely out of hand on Saturday, coming off of one of the worst losses we've had in recent memory. You know, the Indiana loss where we just got, our wheels literally fell off in that game, madman. And you come to this week, you're in Baton Rouge, one of the most intimidating environments in all of college football. And for a half there was some serious magic going on with UCLA football that brought a lot of joy to you and I watching that game. We were converting on third and fourth downs. We were moving the football at will. Logan Loya got back in the mix. I mean, there was a lot of good things going on. The second half, we had 206 yards of total offense. In the first half, we finished the game with 295. So the second half, we only had 89 yards of total offense. But for a half there, madman, it felt like, we saw the future of what the Deshaun Foster era could be like if everything went right. Talk to me, brother. I know we were texting throughout the game. We were a little bit busy. We may have baby Madney coming here any second now, guys. So send your thoughts and prayers out to my guy Jamal and the Madney family for welcoming a new baby girl to the world. But talk to me about your thoughts about the game, man, because, boy, that first 30 minutes of action, we were right in that, but we were tied going into halftime at LSU, bro.
No, Thriller, I mean, in as much as moral victories go, and I know that's sort of a loaded term in today's day and age in college football and college sports, but in as much as you can say a loss is a moral victory, that was it this Saturday, because there was so much to sort of build off of moving forward. We have to remember, Will, you and I know this, think about the context going into this Saturday. I mean, coming off of a 29-point debacle at home against Indiana, looked completely lifeless. There was a lot of concerns over the course of the week as to the energy level of the team. There were multiple player coaches meetings to sort of try and up the energy. You go to kickoff thinking Toia, Keanu Williams, a TMA not starting, their scratches, Kanye Clark. You're just sort of wondering, what is this going to look like with the team that is low confidence after last week, low energy, and then low depth? I mean, you have all three of those things as sort of the context going up against a preeminent SEC opponent in LSU in their building, and you almost start thinking about the worst. And my goodness, what a terrific first half this was, Will. I mean, it was 17 all at the half, but it was 10-7 UCLA, early in that second quarter. And that opening drive, Will, LSU sort of marched down the field pretty much at will and made it 7-0. And you had to wonder, oh, my God, here comes the avalanche. Here we go. And then that opening drive, Will, was just absolutely phenomenal. That third down, the check to Keegan Jones for that 28 yards really inspired that possession. There was a fourth down conversion, Garbers to TJ Harden, where he found the hot route on the blitz, and knew that there was kind of an end, and it was just TJ found it there. And then that beautiful sort of eye manipulation throw to Jack Peterson to tie the game. We had another possession where Quasi Gilmer, Will, our guy, that we feel is the future explosive weapon of this program, busted open in terms of coverage. Garbers found him, set up a field goal. And then that, last possession of the half, my goodness. I mean, what another incredible catch by Quasi Gilmer on the tip. It sort of reminded me of the curse reception, Will, in that Seahawks-Patriots game, in that right sideline. It was tipped up. He was able to make that catch. And then Garbers did a phenomenal job finding Flores on that rollout in the back of the end zone. And you're thinking tied, and then it was holding, and you thought that was so deflating. And then Garbers found a way to step into the pocket with 2 seconds to go, take the hit, and then find our man, Logan Loya, the man who's been on a milk carton the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, the man who has been missing in action, comes through to tie this game at 17. And the players sort of run off the field, Will, to a very nice UCLA crowd as well. We need to shout out the fans for being able to make that trip. There was a really nice section there, and players ran out and really sort of acknowledged the crowd, and you felt there was a ton of momentum. And so a really lot of positive there, Will, to be able to go head-to-head with the team that is ranked 14th in the country starting today in terms of these polls in their building. Now, obviously, second half was a different story. Concerns about the defensive line, and we'll get into it, but they just seem to kind of wear down, and that lack of depth sort of played a role. LSU had a 96-yard drive, a 92-yard drive, and it just sort of methodically the game kind of went away. But I think we need to focus, Will, on that first half, all the good things that we saw there. And if this team can harness that first half and continue to get really quality in-game experiences these next 2 weeks against Oregon and Penn State, we are setting ourselves up to make a late season run and potentially be bowl eligible again. And so I think, that's how we sort of need to think about this, is the building blocks and the growth to be able to set up a late season run. So in as much as, you can lose a game 34-17, you got to feel very encouraged by what you saw for one half of football, particularly after last week.
Yeah, and I think the natural place to start on things we like is Garbers looked fantastic for a majority of this game. 22 of 36 for the air, 281 yards.
Totally, Will. And I'll wait for you to sort of jump back in, but I think you were talking about Garbers. Absolutely. I mean, 22 of 36, 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, the 1 interception there. Was a little bit tough at the end, but he was terrific, Will, in that first half. And I think when he was at his best is when he was quick with the ball. And he was really quick with the decision-making. Again, out in the flats to Keegan, out in the flats to TJ, quick read to Peterson, finding Quasi Gilmer when he rolled out, finding Flores early on some of those underneath throws. He even found Sturdivant when he needed to. So, on some quick balls. So, when he was decisive with the ball, it really made a huge difference there. And when he was able to sort of key in and really be intentional with being able to throw the ball to his progressions, that's really where we had a lot of success as a team. I think where things started struggling a bit is when the plays were starting to get more long drawn out. And I think that's where Eric Bieniemy now needs to go back into the shop and say, okay, I got to stick with these sort of quicker decision type of plays. I think there were plays later in that game where Garber's, it was deeper step drops, 5-step drops, 7-step drops. There were more sort of progressions, longer developing plays. And I think that's where we got into a little bit of trouble then with the offensive line's ability to sort of hold their blocks and be able to maintain a pocket. But also where we were struggling as well then was with the penalties and then the sacks. And then that led to the interception. So a lot of good Ethan Garbers. Hopefully we can sort of take that in terms of this quick, decisive playmaking moving forward, and then kind of eliminate some of those plays where he was not set up for success, Will. So I think we got some good Ethan. We got some challenging Ethan. Glad you're back, Thriller. I was just sort of breaking down, he was really good when he was quick and decisive with the ball. It was kind of one read, out in the flats, out to Gilmer, out to Loya, out to Sturdivant, and so forth, even Flores. Where we sort of started struggling is when it was longer developing plays than in the second half. 5-step drops, 7-step drops. The line couldn't sort of hold their blocks as well. You couldn't sort of hold a pocket. Led to more sacks, holding penalties, and then ultimately that interception. So hopefully Bieniemy says, hey, I want to be more decisive with my plays. It's going to have to be kind of one read, two read, and then make a decision versus the longer developing plays. So I think if he can kind of tighten up the playbook, Will, like we talked about that framework element, this may be one of those core principles that he can build this offense around is shorter, quicker, crisper plays. I think there's a lot to love because obviously we saw, Will, some incredible playmakers here. We saw the emergence of Gilmer. We saw Shaw, on a quick kind of jet sweep.
Run. Yeah.
That was fantastic. Berger, made an appearance. I mean, there were some really nice things. And then finally, we got more touches with Keegan Jones. So we have so many tools in the toolbox here, Will. It's just about kind of being quicker and more decisive with the offense.
Yeah, and sorry about that, guys. Connection issues on my end. But to kind of harp back on it, 9 different receivers caught the football for the UCLA Bruins on Saturday. He was peppering the ball around. He was getting comfortable. He was getting confident. The big one for me, man, Logan Loya being just back in the lineup. I never really understood why we went away from him. And I know you have chemistry with Titus. I know Sturdivant is a guy you can't exactly put on ice out there, put on the bench. We know what Rico Flores is. I mean, he's a walking mismatch. But the fact remains is Loya was the returning wide receiver on this team. He's built up a lot of cachet with these teammates in his locker room. And 46 yards, a critical touchdown catch. And I just want to go back to what Garbers did on that play. The toughness he knew to just take a huge hit on the road at LSU in Baton Rouge and still deliver the football in a timely manner to get Loya open and find himself for the touchdown. I thought that was a play that just embodies, what Ethan Garber's strength is. When he's at his best, man, he is confident and he's going to go out there and make some big-time plays. And he always has this chip on his shoulder in a lot of ways. And I just was really impressed with what Ethan brought to the table on that front. You brought to the point Keegan Jones, man. That third down catch. We have been, echoing this for so long. Let's get Keegan involved with the offense. That was kind of, the whole thing we had last year, the issue we had with Chip Kelly, because he won us the Washington State game. He goes to UConn. He transfers back. Bieniemy, Deshaun Foster wanted back in the running back room. 3 catches for 50 yards. He was making a clear impact when it came to that. And it's a story as old as time. If you're a UCLA football fan, you pay close attention. This guy, as a pass catcher out of the backfield, is a difference maker at every level. What is it like with having Keegan Jones back? Because he was also able to, in limited attempts, move the ball a little bit more rushing than we had previously seen. What do you think Keegan Jones can mean to this offense? And do you think you've seen enough to maybe make him RB1 as we move in to week number 4 for UCLA?
Well, you said it really well there. I mean, I just think Keegan brings a dynamism and a versatility that it sort of is the epitome of what Eric Bieniemy wants to do. I mean, you're talking about a true home run hitter in the backfield in terms of being able to pop off big runs. And then obviously you talk about his ability as a pass catcher out of the backfield. Will, we saw it at its sort of finest 2 years ago, right? I mean, when we went on that run with DTR, started 5-0, started 6-0. Keegan was that guy in so many ways to be able to sort of make big plays that season to either kind of ensure greater separation of those games or be sort of an inflection point for momentum. So to me, I think the magic number, Will, for Keegan is sort of 10 touches. You got to find a way to get him 10 touches a game. And that's a combination of rushes. That's a combination of receptions. That could be a combination of punt returns. But you got to get him 10 plus touches. And you saw it here, Will. He got closer. I mean, there were games, these first two, where it's 3 or 4 touches. Now he's at 7 or 8, and you're seeing really good things happen on offense because he's somebody that you have to account for. And when you account for a Keegan Jones, guess what? That opens up the run lanes for a TJ Harden. That opens up Harden out of the backfield as a receiver. That opens up the likes of a Gilmore or a Loya and others to be able to operate in space, because you got to cheat a little bit, either cheat more in the box or sort of cheat from a hash mark to hash mark standpoint on Keegan Jones as a receiver. And now you're starting to create space in zone shell type of concepts. You're trying to and you're creating mismatches in the open field. So for me, really encouraged to see, Will, the Keegan Jones element sort of pick up, but I want more. And I think in so many ways, having Keegan be RB1 and just sort of lean into that, and then Harden be that sort of RB2 situationally when you need to run, when you need to sort of slow tempo, when you need to go more between the tackles. I think that's what makes a lot more sense. Will, I'm going to give you kind of a hot take here based on the Keegan Jones play. I think UCLA has the fourth or fifth best collection of skill position players in the entire Big Ten. I mean, when you talk about outside of Ohio State, Oregon, USC, maybe Penn State, I think UCLA has the best collection of skill position players in the entire conference outside of those teams. So having a guy like Keegan Jones almost be that table setter, being that sort of Marshall Faulk element to sort of this greatest show on turf type of team, that I think Bieniemy is taking a lot of those concepts. I think more Keegan Jones, the better. And so we were trending in the right direction. But I also don't think it's a coincidence that more Keegan Jones touches has led to us feeling better about this team. And I think that's a very positive correlation that needs to continue.
Absolutely. And, Ben Bolch had a tweet, within the game about just how complex, Eric Bieniemy's offense is and how difficult it is to master that type of offense. So it's going to take a while. And I think we were not prepared for the wait period, the grace period, because it was such an ugly loss to Indiana in week 2. But boy, with that first half when we were humming, like I said at the top of the show, it gives you confidence moving forward that if they are to progress a little bit more with this offense, it can open up the doors that, I think UCLA and their fan base are looking for when it comes to watching a Deshaun Foster-led team in his first year at the helm for UCLA football. I'm going to key on a couple more guys that you may have touched on. Once again, sorry, guys, I had the connection issue, but I'm going to bring it back up with some of these guys. Quasi Gilmer, and I want to say this, I think there were 4 or 5 catches that were very important for this UCLA offense within the first half to make this a close game. I'm going to be honest. I think there's a real case that Quasi's 29-yard gain out to the right side on 3rd and 8, the first catch he made, where he kind of just fell down after getting, making a really nice catch, using a lot of separation on that. And the tip grab, one of the more beautiful plays we've ever seen as a fan of UCLA, just that catch on the right sideline near the end zone, put us in the red zone against LSU with a chance to tie it up before half. We obviously do that. Quasi made some plays that just gives you the flashes that this kid can be elite. 4-star talent. He infamously had the LeBron's video in recruiting. Coming to UCLA, Quasi Gilmore, it looks like the ceiling is insane for this kid. And I'm just so excited to get to watch this kid develop within the UCLA football program. So we got Quasi. I want to hear your thoughts all about Quasi. And then the shocking guy for me was Jalen Berger. Man, he came in 3 carries, 19 yards. Remember, he had another 12-yard gain that got called back due to, a holding penalty on the offensive line. So Berger coming in there and looking like a dude's dude off the rip. I think there's just a lot of encouraging sign because we didn't even get to really see the Quasi Gilmer or the Jalen Berger experiment in games 1 and 2. So just having that kind of at your fingertips, with a struggling offense, I think that's incredibly encouraging. Talk to me about Quasi and Jalen Berger and their impressions on you from Saturday's ballgame.
Oh, no, Will. I mean, you said it best. And I think Gilmer is that guy that we think is the future of this program in terms of from a dynamism perspective, right? And our friends at spring ball and fall ball, we were sort of talking, we were saying, he's wearing that number 3. That was a famed number 3, back in the day with Freddie Mitchell. And there's kind of a breakaway element to him in that particular way. I think that what I loved about the 2 catches, Will, is it sort of exemplified his 2 skill sets, right? The first was his ability to get a lot of separation. And then the second catch was more about his ball skills and sort of his catch radius. And so you sort of saw it all in both of those elements. And, we felt that J. Michael Sturdivant is sort of the best athlete, currently in terms of the receivers. And it's a shame he's not getting more touches in this offense. Hopefully his time will come. But Gilmer is the heir apparent, if not already. I mean, I think we knew he was the future. He might end up being the present in terms of, the most sort of athletic wide receiver that's getting the ball. So to see Gilmer sort of translate, because, Will, we saw it in fall ball. I mean, he was balling out there and getting a ton of separation on these corners and doing a phenomenal job. So I couldn't agree more with you. His ability to get open, because I think he brings a different element, Will. I think Loya is phenomenal. We love him. I'm really happy to see him back in the offense, to your point, leading receiver. But he's your traditional prototype textbook slot receiver, right? Your Welker, your Edelman, that type of receiver. TMA is a little bit more of that as well, with kind of more shiftiness. TMA actually reminds me a lot of Steve Smith, old Steve Smith of USC. Not Carolina Panthers Steve Smith, but USC, New York Giants Steve Smith. Gilmer is this guy, and Sturdivant is so long, but Gilmer is this guy who's sort of, very fluid as an athlete, and I think just brings another dimension to this team. And then Berger, Will, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. What a find. It's a shame that he's sort of a senior. We're only going to have him this 1 year, but I think we may have found, Will, the thunder and lightning combination with Keegan and Berger, actually. And as crazy as this is to sound, TJ might be the odd man out for now, moving forward, because I think given where the offensive line is right now, I think you need a bigger back that can sort of impose some force as well, and needing to be able to kind of shed that first block, that first tackle, because it's coming, just given the nature of where the offensive line is right now. I thought that Berger played with a burst and a size that actually kind of reminded me a little bit, Will, of like Marshawn Lloyd from across town, last year. And just kind of, there's a size, there's sort of a physicality to the way he runs. Granted, it was a very few carries, but you saw a spark, you saw something there. So I think to see what Gilmer does moving forward, to see what Berger does moving forward, more Keegan Jones, and with Shaw as well, there's just so many weapons on this team, Will. And I'm glad that Bieniemy is kind of getting more into his bag and understanding how deep this team is. So really encouraging there.
And I think that's the frustrating part for us, is because we know we have talent on this offensive side of the football. And, if it was even just briefly for a half, we were able to see glimpses of that, which was encouraging moving forward. Let's get to some of the negative stuff in this ball game. And you and I talked about it at length throughout spring, what we saw moving forward. Dude, the trench play on both sides of the football is just not up to snuff. I think if we want to be a competitive team at one of the Power 2 conferences within college football. The offensive line, and we have some serious issues at the center position. Josh Carlin is a very good guard, for reference. I think he is a very talented guard. Moving him to center after probably not playing center since high school, which is very, very different than playing just the right guard, has been a difficult situation to adjust to. I liked the move for Prongos actually coming in and playing guard as opposed to Makaheli, who is struggling out there. We wish him well moving forward. But the offensive line, it's still, Garbers was just beat up back there by this LSU defense. That was to be expected at some point, but if we ever want to get to a level where we're competing for our goals as a university, getting to high-level bowl games, competing for conference championships, taking that next step that we know is there as a sleeping giant program, the offensive line has got to fix itself, man. And, even DeGiorgio, who's probably one of our most consistent linemen, was getting thrown around out there like a rag doll at times in this ball game. It's confusing to me. I think this makeshift offensive line, we had a lot of concerns about. We saw Makelele and Unijay come in. Unijay's been struggling a lot recently, so there's a lot of issues on that offensive side of the ball. And then in the defensive side of the ball, no pass rush. And we've talked about the last couple of weeks, the lack of edge presence. And you're not going to replace the Latu overnight. By the way, that Latu first career sack today on Caleb Williams while forcing the fumble. How cool was that? I mean, that was the all-time. If you follow the UCLA and USC rivalry game like you and I do, that is one of the coolest plays that can happen in the NFL because Latu was very much a huge reason why they walked out of the Coliseum last year with a win against the crosstown rival against USC. But no edge presence. And I want to pin you this question. Ruka Bruin on Twitter actually quote tweeted me and asked me this question. It's a very thoughtful question to ask. His question was essentially, we've acquired Sheriff Saye coming from Florida A&M, Drew Tuazama, who came from South Carolina last year, and the guy that we were raving about coming in from Miami, Collins Champion. All of these guys are talented defensive linemen that can immediately help us, at least give us some bodies out there to throw. None of them have really gotten playing time since they've been at UCLA. Why do you think this is not, coming for UCLA, especially at a position of need? And would you maybe experiment on the offensive line? We haven't seen Michael Carmody yet. The Notre Dame transfer. This guy comes from one of the premier offensive line institutions, has been training there for about 4 years. Let this guy see a crack at it because I'm sure he's experienced. He went up against Notre Dame defensive lines every year, training for the offensive line. Those are the problems I have is we got these transfers in and Carmody on the offensive line, Saye, Tuazama, and Collins Champion, and we have yet to really see any of that. And maybe this could be a step forward with Jalen Berger finally getting touches. But with how dire these positions are, I need to see some results. I need to see some results fast. What do you think about those guys? And talk to me about the trench play for UCLA.
Yeah, Will, really well said. And I think really spot on. I mean, we'll start with kind of the offensive line. And, Will, it was kind of related to that earlier point where only 14 yards rushing again. And again, some of that is, you got to factor in the sacks with Garbers. But at the end of the day, the leading rusher in the game was Keegan Jones with 22 yards rushing. And the leading rusher, Will, on the season over 3 games is TJ Harden with 72 yards rushing over 3 games. So TJ is averaging 24 yards rushing a game, and he leads the team. And Garbers is still the second leading rusher on the team with 47 yards. So, we just can't get to have any semblance of any sort of run blocking right now in terms of flow, in terms of opening up holes. Everyone seems kind of overmatched from time to time. I think the one guy you could say is sort of somewhat consistent and doing a nice job is Holstage. I mean, outside of that, it's been really tough. And I think it's a lesson, I think, for the coaching staff moving forward is that it's no disrespect to sort of other institutions, but it's going to be hard to kind of bring in non-Power 4 transfers into the Big Ten and then just sort of expect them to produce. And I think this is going to be sort of a longer-term play. I think the transfer portal works for the offensive line. If you get a Carmody, if you get a guy from a Notre Dame, you get somebody from a Power 5, a Power 4 school. But I think it's going to be really tough in this Big Ten to be able to just sort of get guys from non-Power 4 schools and expect them to play big roles on this offensive line. So I think you have to sort of build that recruiting pipeline and then do the strength and conditioning and sort of, it's going to be hard, but it's going to take a couple of years to be able to build that offensive line pipeline, Will. I don't think this is going to be sort of a snap of the finger here moving forward. And to that point, why isn't Carmody in the game? Especially when you're sort of looking at guys that are playing out of position, guys that are already starting to get banged up. And I think, the only thing I can say there is sometimes you don't want to have sort of an overreaction after just 2 games. But now you're in 3 games. Now you've got, enough of a sample where hopefully either for this Oregon game or potentially once you're sort of on the other side of these next 2 difficult games and you're ready to make a run, hopefully you go deeper with your bench because the offensive line play has been really, really challenging. We talked about the run game. And then that's when, even offensively, sometimes we would take 1 step forward and then take 1 step backward. on a holding penalty, on a sack. And I think what Eric Bieniemy is going to have to do, to our earlier point, he's just going to have to make quicker plays, because he's just going to have to realize that, Garber's just not going to have that much time. It's got to be kind of a 1 read, 2 read go. It's 1 read, 2 read, the ball's either out, or 1 read, 2 read, you're throwing it away, or 1 read, 2 read, and you're taking off and running. I mean, that's kind of when the offense was doing its best. On the defensive side of the ball, Will, again, second consecutive game, no sacks, 0 sacks. And then second consecutive game, because of the lack of the pass rush, that a team could do whatever they wanted on third down. Will, last week it was 9 for 12 was Indiana on third down. This week, 10 for 15 LSU was on third down. I mean, just staggering third down numbers because there was no semblance of a pass rush. And this is where, again, I am puzzled. I thought this would actually be the Collins-Acheampong game, particularly with Keanu missing, particularly with, Toia was a game time kind of decision. He gutted out and played. Kudos to him. But this is where you got to see the depth. I don't know what's holding them back. Are they absorbing the playbook? Are they themselves a little bit injured in practice? Because Deshaun is not sharing kind of injury reports now. Are they, is it an academic thing? I mean, I don't want to speculate, but are there some off the field things why they're not getting on the field? Are they not, sort of absorbing the defensive playbook? Are they a little bit banged up themselves? Or are the coaching staff just a little bit gun shy? And if it's the latter, I think now is the time to sort of cut it loose, go deeper, and see what you have. I couldn't agree more. But Will, that's my sort of concern moving forward is, how is this team going to hold up in terms of the trench play? Obviously, the next 2 games, it's more mismatches. But if you're going to make that run later in the year to try and get to that 6 wins, to make that bowl game, which, by the way, I think is going to be absolutely imperative for Deshaun Foster to be able to grow this program, you got to get better line play. And I think that's where the focus has to be moving forward. Really concerning. I don't know if I remember a year, Will, where both lines have been as challenged at the same time on this team. We've had years where the O-line's been a struggle. We've had years where the D-line's been a struggle. But to have both of them struggle to this level at the same time in the same year, I would have to go back, more than 20 or 25 years to see something like this.
Yeah, man. And, the majority of the penalties on the team, we had 9 penalties for 80 yards. I would say upwards of 50, 55 yards of those were false starts, holding penalties within the offensive line. And just the inconsistencies in the play and the undisciplined play, as I just mentioned with the penalties, Garber's is going to get seriously hurt if they don't figure that out, because they're playing against serious teams. I mean, Penn State's defensive line and Oregon's defensive line coming into these next 2 games, these have dudes. These are talented guys that they're going to be bringing against UCLA on that front. I don't understand the Carmody point. I really don't. At least toss the guy out there. And with the defensive line, at the very least, maybe it is some off-the-field issues, as you speculated, but kind of the way to give yourself an advantage on the defensive line is to constantly rotate different bodies in and out and keep them fresh. You know what I mean? Send fresh legs at these offensive linemen every single play, and it allows you to kind of have an advantage of, well, I've got more energy. This guy's been out here for 12, 13 plays on this drive. I've got a shot at getting past him and getting to the quarterback here. That's a clear advantage. I don't understand not at least rotating those guys in when you have a shot at that. So a little concerning on those 2 fronts. But, I think overall, as we try to wrap this up, the funny line I have for this game is good teams win, great teams cover. And UCLA, if you bet, we were 24.5-point underdogs. If you bet, the under on that, you came away a winner. We're not a great team, but boy, do we cover this weekend for our bettors out there. I just think UCLA moving forward, if we can really elevate ourselves in the trench play, we could be really good, man, because you nailed it with the skill position players. And you also talked about it with Bieniemy, maybe, changing up his offense a little bit. Yeah, I think those screen passes came in a lot more effective this week, as we knew the offensive line just wasn't going to cut it. I mean, Keegan, 3 catches for 50 yards. Harden had that crucial 4th down conversion on the left-hand side. So let's get more of that. Let's try to keep our guy Garber out there. Let's get some quick read hits for Ethan Garbers. Try to get some semblance of a run game. And maybe we got a shot. Oregon has been a little overrated this year so far, as is LSU. I got to be honest. LSU we could easily be looking at a world where they're, 1-3 right now. And I mean, if UCLA comes out in the second half and balls out, they could be 0-4. That South Carolina game, it came down to the last minute.
Yeah.
Nicholls State, they were up by 2 points, heading into the fourth quarter. There was some serious doubts there, man, on that side of the football. So, guys, let's keep the faith. Let's keep it moving. Those are my last comments. Madman, I'm going to give you the floor to close this thing out. What are your final comments as you
No, Will, I think, it's really important, I think, for fans and all of us collectively to understand the bigger picture. And Will, I think to your point, there's a much bigger picture at stake here. We're at 1-2. We're playing 2 really good teams. It's probably going to be 1-4, guys. We just have to sort of mentally be ready for that. There's just a talent discrepancy there. But then there is an opportunity to make a run. And I think that's what we have to sort of think through is how we've got 7 games after that. How do we start peaking and sort of get ready for that SC game at the end? And how can we get to a world where this team goes 5-2 in their last 7 games and gets bowl eligible and makes that bowl game? And I think it's so critical, Will, for year 1 of Deshaun to be able to make that bowl game because it allows these guys that are coming back into the program an opportunity to have 10, 20 additional, practices, have another bowl game, have another big time setting, and really set up the momentum going into year 2 for Deshaun. So the difference between a bowl game and not a bowl game, I think, is absolutely critical.
Huge.
Because, Will, not to go too far down, but if we kind of zoom out, bigger picture, we're talking about the challenge of the line play. Look, Holstige and Carlin are seniors. They're not going to be here next year. Toia is not going to be here next year. All of our linebackers, in terms of Medrano, Oladijo, John Vaughns, Ali Kehoe, they're all seniors. Okay, even when you look at our back end with KJ Wallace, with Addison, with Ramon Henderson,
what are the
all
offense,
seniors.
Man?
And then the offense with Garbers, Keegan, there's a lot, Loya, Sturdivant. All these guys are going to be gone next year. So we have to be able to start building that talent pipeline to be able to start getting competitive in the Big Ten. And the way you do that is to A, showcase your program in bigger games, but then B, give your players an opportunity to develop moving forward. So I can't overstress the criticality of the ability for Deshaun to be able to get to a bowl game year 1. So even though we're most likely going to be 1-4, that's almost when the season begins for UCLA in terms of how can we now set the stage for a 5-2 like run to become bowl eligible. And Will, I think you said it best. On the offensive line, let's get more of a rotation going and let's get shorter plays on offense and understand that. And on the defensive line, Will, we have one of 2 choices. We have to either enhance the rotation, to your point, and sort of just be fresher and throw more bodies, or we just have to do more 3 down linemen and 8 back. We rush 3 and drop 8. One of those 2 things needs to happen, and hopefully both sides of the ball understand that and have kind of a clear strategy moving forward. So we have a lot to be excited about with this first half. Let's see now what we can do with Oregon. Let's see what we can do with Penn State. And I think that the clarity is if they can put together 2 more performances like this, Will, and even though it'll be 1-4, but take away so many positives, I think just from a mental perspective, a mentality standpoint, just a psyche perspective, to be 1-4, I think there's a lot of positivity to make a run here. And the season almost begins in 2 weeks to be able to make that bowl game. So let's be excited. Let's be passionate. And I have to sort of shout out once again the fans for making it out to Baton Rouge. There was a great section of UCLA fans there. They did a terrific job. Let's hope we build on that momentum and really pack the Rose Bowl against a national championship quality Oregon team at night, 8 p.m. at night. The Rose Bowl, the San Gabriel Mountains, doesn't get any better than this. So 4's up, guys. Let's stay positive. A lot of ball to be played, and let's see this team improve in the weeks to come.
Yeah, just one more point before we close. I think that's the inherent problem I've been having with Bieniemy is he installs this new complex offense in a year where we can't afford a lot of mistakes because if we get to the bowl game like we're supposed to, it allows us to open up the recruiting profile where we can get these talented players and we can prove we're a winning program in year 1 because, like you said, man, we're losing about 15, 16 starters come next year. Next year's going to be even worse, in my opinion. It's going to be a lot harder of a rebuild next year. That's why we needed the immediate success this year. So simplify the offense, get those quick hit reads out of the backfield like we were talking about, rotate some linemen in, and we may have a chance moving forward, guys. We'll be back. We're going to preview Oregon later this week, but thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for, withstanding, my connection issues on here. Madman, you're the best, man. Much love, guys. We'll talk to you guys later. 4's up. Go Bruins.